So I'm really happy to meet on the floor Maik Nogens, who comes from Germany.
Welcome.
And as this is today the last track, I think it's time to take like areas which we are not covered today, and I must say this is art. Maik, your presentation is about quality radar. This sounds like a picture, not the official report. Am I right?
It's both. So as the saying goes, a picture says more than 1,000 words. So we really put an emphasis on having a good visualization. But then, of course, it's fed by data as well. So you get both kind of.
So I understand that you prefer to have one picture instead of 1,000-page manual report.
Definitely. So that goes, for other documentations as well. If you have 200 pages test strategy, I get bored reading the table of contents. So if you can visualize it in a one-page test plan or something, people will at least stick to it and take the time to go through that.
Thank you, and now the floor is yours and the expectations are high.
Thank you. So, thanks and welcome. Thanks for having me here. As you see, today I present from our experience, what we use in our company, what we came up with and why did we come up with it. Of course, the mandatory introduction, so that's me. Been in testing for over 20 years, so humans and computer were always my two poles where I oscillate around. So I was working with humans, with testers, with developers, as a test consultant, and also doing community work locally in my hometown, Hamburg, northern Germany, where we come together in meetups and exchange about testing in general. And since 2 years, I'm in the company called Diconium, which is part of the Volkswagen Group by now, but the company is for 30 years in the e-commerce space, so the typical look for your product, put it in the basket, pay it, even with payment testing involved as well to a certain degree. So, and yeah, some statistical numbers, you can read it up later in the PDF and slides. And our business, we are like a full service agency, focus on the e-commerce space, so we really do everything from ideation up to operations in the end. So the typical client is not only Volkswagen, not only automotive, but really from laundry machines to garden tools, everybody who has a kind of big enough e-commerce need will be probably also look into our services. So, to start this topic, I would bring it to the audience. Just a question, how do you feel about the air quality here in the room? It's a big room, we are quite a lot of people. Just think about it, is it okay? Do you feel there's enough oxygen? Now we have the door open after the break. Is it better than before? Second, how's the lighting? Is it okay? Some people prefer the dark mode, some like it more light. I'm kind of blinded here, like many speakers before, so my quality assessment of the lighting situation, not quite sure. And in general, how are you feeling yourself? We all had lunch, we had our coffee, a little break in air, so maybe good. So what I want to say, quality is different. The first question, how's the air quality? We could probably measure it. There's regulation, there's standard, how much should it be? There are devices who beep if the oxygen level drops, stuff like that. The other, lighting, okay, maybe we could find a middle ground, a balance here. But when it really comes to yourself, there's a lot of factors going in. How do I feel? Like I'm nervous now. You are probably not, or maybe. So it's like quality. And why do we have these these questions, like why do I want to know how the oxygen level is? Of course, there are needs or information I like to have, like not necessarily in these examples, but also in our testing, in our developing context. So we always want to know, where are we? When I boarded my plane to come here, I was like, okay, how long is the flight time? What does I need to go from the airport to the hotel? When I'm there, when do I reach my goal, my target? And I think this also reflects in our developing work. Product managers want to know when we are finished. Maybe the developer wants to know when is the pipeline running finished. So to see where are we, how much longer do we need, how much maybe more testing do we need, and if we don't have this kind of feel or information, then we never know when we are finally reaching it or not. And after the 5 slide, I didn't want to make it any longer, but you get the feel why maybe we have these needs, and that's also why people come and ask us as a tester, as a designer, as a developer, like, how long do it take? When can I give it to my clients? When can I ship it, release it? When is testing done? How good is the testing? But quality is not a unique, universal truth. It's not defined as such. And I can't see her with her red suit, so she's probably in the break. But as Oksana said, it depends sometimes on your quality definition. And that is true. It's a relationship between me and the lighting, between me and the audience, and in our professional context, as maybe software developers and testers as well. A release manager might have different quality aspects in his head or her head than the developer or the site engineer. So, and while Googling, I found certain quotes. I never thought I would put Jeff Bezos in a testing presentation, but here we are. Because I like also his statement, quality is hard to define because nothing about is constant. Clients always have growing expectations, changing expectations. They always want more and better and maybe also faster. So it's a relation. And then it's like, okay, as already mentioned, we have different stakeholders. Maybe the developer has a need on information and progress, which is different than the release manager. There are different flight levels, different amounts of detail or less detail they need, or maybe a compressed state of certain information. So, and this also feeds into the next slide, like how do we give this information? Like when is it enough? And how detailed do they want it and do they need it? Do I know if as we said here, my report, my test report is 100 pages of bugs listing and risk listing and whatnot is too much for the certain stakeholder who is not interested in too much technical detail, not aware or experienced in so much development details. Like how do we find the right balance? Because it also doesn't help. These are just random screenshots from the internet. If we make something like this, for example here, existing student logged in, free estimate failed. Okay, why? Without more context, like even I can only assume that I find out what they mean here. Does it also work here? Oh yeah. Da. Because here's a minute. Is it now failed because the minute, 5 minutes is too much for this test case? Or was it just a duration? Other aspects are here. Number of defects found during QA, 10. Critical defects by end users, 2. So critical defects, 20%. Is that in relation? Are the number of defects found during QA testing automatically critical defects? Is it a mix? Like what does these numbers tell me? And this is sometimes what we call simple metrics we can show. It's a typical, hey, we have 200 test cases, we have 80% automated. Okay, what does it tell me in detail if I really want to dig down? Some, like these graphical dashboards, the gauges here, look a little bit more nicer. And on the right side, we can see there's a CIQ dashboards. But still, there's a lot of information on context behind it reduced. So how can we provide the right information on this, or tailor to the stakeholders, with enough detail level, not too much, not too less. And that is also the background we came. So this is the setting in which basically led to this creation of this quality radar. So a huge program, 10 teams. Of course, every team was staffed cross-functional, so you had testers in it, and you have still separate testing groups for end-to-end flows and stuff like that on different environments. And as it goes, so it's running for a few years. It was started and the clients liked it, so they gave more money, they wanted more features, so it grew and grew. And now it was like 3-4 years later, 150 people, and the creaky and the cracks are showing. So because from the way it was started and grew too fast, it's not keeping there. So they still had the need for status, because they saw like, oh man, deployments are taking longer than last year, and maybe we have more bug counts or bug reports from production, from the clients like before. Why? Where do we stand? And they also went, because different stakeholders, they have different levels of experience, for kind of simple information. Maybe if we automate enough, then we will solve it all. Or maybe if we put more focus on end-to-end testing, we fix it all. So they were looking like, okay, what are the numbers you can give us on this? And it was very testing, so the operational part of quality, testing focused, and then kind of easy to show numbers from all the tools you have, Jira and SonarCube and whatnot, but not really showcasing the maybe underlying issues, like environments, data quality and stuff like that. So we said, okay, how do we get out of this? And what does it mean? That was typical numbers we had, test cases, so how much are failed and blocked, automation percentages, etc. But for example, from the failed or blocked test cases, even there was not a clear definition over all the teams, how they, or what blocked means and what fails means. So that would be sometimes also incorporate waiting time or delays or breakings due to infrastructure, like wrong software installed, system not booted up, whatever, the typical what is in the big cluster of environments. Data as well, automation percentages similar, like what did we automate? Because of the kind of fast feature cycles the client was expecting, often we just automated the simple happy path. Okay, maybe better than nothing, but what really a percentage of 80% automation, what does it mean if it's only the happy path? Are we really in a good risk assessment on this? So, if we accept that all models are wrong, and also our simple number, our one-dimensional numbers are not really helping, how can we change it? So, and that was when we started, so we are like organized by competence centers, so we have a test competence centers where like 60 of our colleagues are all involved, and we shape also the whole quality for the whole group. So that's where we said, okay, how do we get out of this? Having to hand out simple numbers, simple metrics, versus helping our stakeholders delivering the right information they need to take their decisions. Should we postpone releases? Can we talk with the clients? Do we need to staff more people? Different stuff they can do. And we came up with our criteria in that sense, bring it out of these operational testing QA to the basically whole team, thinking about quality, find the right flight level, and the most tricky part, as we will see, was the right aspects, like what do we want to focus on? Is it end-to-end cases? Is it pipeline? Something. We will see some more details there. And then not only build up these kind of report or visualization for the whole team, like incorporating more aspects, but then again also bring the team together and let them discuss. So really live in the spirit of the whole team of the holistic testing. And in the end, have some nice graphic in that sense to give a first insight and first impulse for the reader of these reports to say, oh yeah, no, I don't understand all the details, but I can already get a better grasp than just maybe seeing one single number. How did we start? And I need to look at my clock. Last year, we also established our competence center vision for the next 5-6 years. And we said, okay, the holistic testing, the whole team approach, that is the way we want to go. Because the old way of working by silo, single, doesn't work really well, and it really has a too narrow focus. And you might have seen it, the top right picture, that's from Janet and Lisa, so which is basically the extended DevOps loops with some aspects and notions on it about testing. So on the top bottom right is our interpretation. So we said, okay, so we combine shift left testing, getting earlier to the product, into the ideation, asking our questions already there and testing it basically, also with shift right. But considering our constraints, we know that still the middle part, basically product development, will be where we will have most impact. So the rest is future vision. That's why it's a long-term strategy, but that's how we started. And then the aspects, for example, we could see on the loop, like build, learn, code, deploy, etc. But as I said, so we started working towards this holistic testing last year. So that is now just a screenshot from an old conference we had, where for all of these dimensions, starting with like plan, align, etc., we already had more details. Where we said, okay, what do we want as a tester do in practice? And counting this already, we have more than 20 detailed items, and that is work in progress. By now it's even more. And then it's like, that is too much. Now that is, again, no stakeholder will really take the time to go through that. So we said, okay, we start simple, and really focus that way on the main dimensions here. Really just simple in that sense, plan, deploy, code, build, learn. Let's start with that. Because if we blow it up too much details, then it becomes too complicated again. And second part of it is a kind of estimation. I was struggling with the word. I had a rating system, scoring system, but then, I don't know, at one point it clicked for me, estimation system. Because for me, as we see on a few slides, it links back to the notion of maybe user story estimation, poker planning, stuff like that. That is what I want to do with the team, so estimation. And still we go with a simple scoring system, 0 to 5, Amazon rating, star rating, stuff. And provide them help, a guidance. What does it mean on the different dimension? When we talk about build, what is the value of 0, which of course is in our culture the worst case, and 5 would be the best case. In the build area, what does it mean? How do I find out as a team, are we a 0, are we a 2, are we a 4? How? Because not every team is the same. Some have maybe no graphical interface, so you cannot link it too hard on UI tests. That doesn't make sense for all of the teams. So how to keep it agnostic enough that we really can use it for all our projects we have, independent of the frameworks we use. Like Volkswagen, for example, is in the SAFe framework. A lot of other clients just do Scrum or maybe even Kanban. But this can fit to all. Of course, it needs a little bit mental translation and mapping power to understand, and that's why we have this guiding table where we say, okay, for the code area, for a zero under test design, we have no conscious test design. Tests are just executed ad hoc. In the middle level, we have test design is used with exploratory testing and charters. And these example table, that's what we bring to the teams when we establish that and give them introductions and coaching sessions and stuff. And of course, refine it. And that links back to some of the aspects. For example, in the holistic testing, if you talk about the planning segment of this loop, techniques like BDD are valued, are very positive. So it's very encouraged that people should use it. And not only on the technical side, like, I have Gherkin running. No, bring it really to your customer, because you're in the early phase. You want to check your understanding of the story of the feature ID he brings to your team. And that BDD can be one way, specification by example, would be another. Gil is here somewhere on the venue, so if you're interested in that, speak with him. That is something we want to have. So if a team doesn't have BDD or is similar, it's only an example. Maybe some say, we do specification by example. Good, same. Map it for your team and your context, and then figure out how it is. And then you see, okay, actually the user stories come without acceptance criteria, because maybe in the SAFe framework, wherever the PI and pipe plannings are, before it hits the operational team, there's a long time, and the details are not clear. Then you already maybe have a point you could improve on, if that is your major pain point at the moment. Because that brings us then to the team communication. It's not meant as an assessment, so especially not from an external comes and says, okay, answer me these questions, and I give you a 2 or a 4, and that's it. But really see it as a kind of poker planning session. Come together as a team, say we want to improve ourselves, we want to find out, and maybe also showcase to other stakeholders. This is where we are. In most areas we may be already good, and maybe good enough for our context. It doesn't make sense to get to a level of 5 if we only have a throwaway product for an exhibition or for a one-time event. Maybe a 3 is good enough. Or maybe some areas are out of your influence. Then it becomes hard. But even that is information you can transport and show to your stakeholders. And it's more fact-based. It's not one single opinion in the end. It's a team discussion, and maybe there's an exchange of information where the developer says but our pipeline is always breaking, and I need always every morning 1 hour to look into and fix it. And the PO would be, what? I never knew that, so why don't you tell? So you have exchange points, and then you can see if you want to improve on that. And as usual, like in a retrospective, if you want to have action points, you can already, of course, do it and say, this is something we should really invest time in our iterations and put some time aside to fix it. And these quality radar is meant to be run every few iterations. That is also would we really want to run it every iteration, every 2 weeks? Do we expect really so much changes? Maybe not. It's an experiment. We just started it and say no every second iteration. For some teams it means 4 weeks. For other teams it means 6 weeks. And that is where maybe you could already see results, especially if you have defined action plans. or action items. But again, it's always beta. So we run with this experiment, we get our feedback, and then we adjust it as well. So if we have enough time in the end, there's also some kind of outlooks or also changes which are already incorporated in that. We can see, and rounding it up more or less is the graphical display. Also not the best of words, but really something like a graphic, like an image. So where we say, okay, what can we use there? Because at least it might be giving some context. You see here, you don't know what it is, I don't know what it is, but it's something with temperature and the gauge is somewhere in the middle. So without knowing anything, we could interpret it. And even there, I don't know what happened, but I know the dip in the graph probably means something good or something bad. At least that I can already grasp. And this is the power of visualization to get a starting point. And if everybody looks on it and says, yeah, okay, I get it, and it looks okay, good. Then I don't need to have long documents. What we decided on is this radar chart, spider chart, something. I probably saw it in many times before, so it's not the first, I don't know, model or modeling which uses this spider radar chart, but I like it also. And that is basically our 8 main dimensions: plan, build, code, etc. And why do we have 2 lines? That was already another idea I'm playing around. If we, as a test competence center in our case, or you in your company, have some kind of established standard, where you, for example, say, for us, in our industry, in our context, everybody needs to have a running pipeline where unit tests are automatically triggered with every commit. Then maybe you have already a minimum value of 2 in the code or build area. And that would be, for example, the orange ring in the middle. And then you transport already a second information. You could say, like here, now my eyes are not, so you can look it up here probably. In the learn area, where the dip is here between blue and orange, something is different. Why? Let's talk about it. Maybe it was because we do it every 2 iterations. Maybe there was a high load, a major release, so we didn't do our book clubs, we didn't do any trainings, could be. But then, if it's continuously, because maybe you check every 2 iterations, if it's always like that, maybe there's a systematic problem. And then you have an action point where you say, okay, how do we get out of that? If we value that learning, experimenting on technical stuff, on organization stuff is good for us and for our client. How do we get out of this? Slowly coming to the end. This is open issues and extensions. For example, in the with the example before, with the dip in the learning, if you have trend lines, because you do it every 2 iterations, so over a year, you could put them next to each other, or you can even plot certain dimensions and see how is the trend going. Is it going up? Is it stable? That is something I want to experiment, or we want to experiment, to see if it brings us value, this information, or not. Let's see. Also how to use it for the whole group of us, our 60 people in the competence centers. So not in a sense of comparing, because it's the same like with story point. Story point 4 in one team doesn't mean story point 4 in the other team. Here it's the same. But if we see like one team is very good in one area, like, oh cool, what are you doing that is maybe different than in my team? What can I learn? What can I maybe copy paste and bring back to my project context? Is there something? And that is what we also establish with a quarterly, so where we find all time and come together and randomly pick one of the radars and say, okay, let's talk about it. What do we see? Or maybe also, of course, offering help or insight if something is not going. And then we can say, yeah, we had the same problem last year. We introduced BDD and it got better. Who knows? And then push it more active for higher levels. So at the moment, I would say our border or the system border is more like the PO level, which is already business in that sense, and release management, but that's also where it gets a little bit wobbly. But we really would like to bring it even more. But for that, I want to build up a pool of data points, basically, and make it management presentable, so that we really can bring it higher, and also on the other way, coming back to our starting point, taking out maybe the pressure of what is the status of your test in your team. This answers the need for information, because now maybe they have a better medium where they can see it, and it's more broad than just focus on one simple metric of automated test cases. Another thing which we tried is like level of influence. Like we have certain projects where basically we have some white label solution, and then it goes to the customization teams of a different brand and market. Because Skoda UK and Skoda Germany and Volkswagen Spain, they're all different on the brand customization level. Now that is where our area of influence of testing these customization sometimes ends. Our customers also have their own dedicated end-to-end testing teams. Now then we can say, okay, this is not in our area, so we don't need to look into that, because there's no way that we can change it. So let's see. And then level of standard, if we could roll it out more. So while some models are wrong, some might be useful. And I hope for us that is the way it shows. So as a Northern German, I'm always a little bit understatement. So it's okay, and it goes nice. And these are now just some different examples. That is, for example, from the first iteration I had, where we put up this 20 dimensions. And I said, gee, that seems too much. Let's reduce it, because this is evolving, so in maybe another 6 months we have like 30 dimensions, and then it becomes stupid. So we said, okay, reduce it. But that was one way to play around with it. Here's, for example, from one team over the different months how it is. You could see, just with a quick check in July and October, somewhere on the left middle side, like test reporting, continuous feedback, there seems to be a dip. On test design, they seem to be good. So you can play around, and as you see, it's still in Excel. I'm that old that I still like Excel, and basically my Power App skills are not good enough to hack it in something like that. But that is also an extension plan to get some Power BI or some online app for that, so people don't need to merge Excel files all the time. But yeah, what to do? This is also where I played around and skipped it for one reason or the other. But yeah, now you can maybe get an idea what could be possible. So the recipe list basically is okay. High level of your own choice. Choose your own quality definition, because it's not clear cut. So you need to find it out and develop something which is resilient enough that it can fit to a one team Scrum context versus a 10-team SAFe framework, which makes it a little bit not specific. That is models. Models are always abstractions, but that could work. Don't overcomplicate it. A simple scoring or estimation system is probably good enough. By now, I don't know if you have read the newest book from Lisa and Seleni, QPAM. They have 4 dimensions basically, like beginning, unifying, performing, and the other. I forgot. But that would be maybe even also good enough to start. Gives the team some guidance, because they say, okay, how do I find out? And maybe put a graph on it. So, saying that, while starting with it, or after I started, basically then of course there's more quality radars and stuff like that in the world. So SAFE has their own health radar. It's actually an old slide, because I found out it's not Bess Marshall, it's Nicholas Hedgewick. She also had a quality radar. It has even the same title, but it's totally different, I checked. And yeah, QPAM is also a kind of assessment around the holistic testing with different dimensions and aspects. So if you're interested in these kind of topics as such, there's more in the world to find it, to read up on it and customize it to your own needs. Yeah, and with that, I think we conclude for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Maik. Thank you. Now we have time exactly for 3 questions. So please raise your hand who is ready.
Yes.
For all the teams that I have come across is to quantify so that we can map it to the graphs like this, so that we can see where we are missing, where we are reaching the end, or where we are the best. So what is your feedback, input for them? How can they arrive at this point so that they can quantify things which can further lead them to bring up these radars or graphs?
I don't know if I got it correctly. So how to quantify?
So we had a slide where you had opened up with the numbers,
yes,
and then you plot these numbers against the Q-spider diagram. Then you're going to do the analysis, right? So how are you coming up with that numbers? That is the quantity, right? So, and teams have the challenge with this part actually. So do you have any tips for that?
That is basically the numbers from the estimation session. So where we, when we introduce it, say, okay, this is how the estimation works. 0 is you just do it somehow. And 5 is like, I don't know, you would be Netflix. Let's say this is a good example. So that is what the numbers reflect, the team consents after such a session. And say at the moment, we still have problems with our pipeline, let's say. So the engineer or the developer says like, I think we are only at 2. But then maybe the DevOps guy or the tester lady says like, yeah, but we doubled our pipelines, the cycle time is faster, so I think we are already on a 3. And then you come to a consensus, which is the number, which you then put in the Excel. So that is, so it's not as such a quantity as I would understand it, but really the assessment in a number, how it is used at the moment. Thank you.
Any more hands?
Yeah, thank you for presentation. Just wondering how much time or effort the teams take to fill in that Excel and populate the graphs, and how consistent is that? I understood you take it like on a monthly basis, right?
Yes. So, and then depends. In the initial phase with a little coach and explanation, maybe probably a little bit more. So I would also make it not as part of the retrospective, but really as a separate session or meeting. But when we had the very, very, very first iteration, I just basically give it only to the QA people and say, fill it out, and of course give me feedback, what did you not understand on the questions and the procedure. So in there it was like 20 minutes, but it's only one person opinion. Of course, if you start discussing, and I mean, for me it's a good sign if the team really discuss and have different opinions, because then you know, okay, something is happening there that is good. But we keep a time box and start with 1 hour maximum and see how it goes. And then if you do it every 2 iterations or something,
Do we have one more hand? If not, then I use the opportunity and ask that let's take the quality of the Nordic Testing Days, the conference. How do you imagine the picture or graph what can describe the quality of the conference?
As part of the team, to be honest, now that you ask me, today I would rate the food dimension average, but yeah, the learning is over the top. It's 11, so I really enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.